Glaivier, aka Lancemaster, is just a few days away from being released in the West, and let me tell you, this is definitely going to be one of the most popular classes played. Lancemaster is an absolute blast of a class to play, and if you're thinking about trying it, listen up, because in this video, I'm going to be giving you guys that introduction to the class so that you can decide whether this class is worth trying out or not for yourself. As always, I'm streaming live on Twitch, so be sure to catch me on that platform as well as my Twitter. And one more quick plug, but I just recently started a second YouTube channel that will consist of shorter clips or highlights to all my streams or videos or podcasts, whatever that may be. So definitely follow me on that channel. Hit me with a subscribe over there. Links can be found in the description below. Comparable to a melee version of Gunslinger due to its stance swapping, Glaivier comes equipped with two stances. A blue stance which gives you wider, fatter hitboxes, and a red stance which typically give you thinner and longer hitboxes. Each time you swap stances, you'll gain a buff in accordance to how much meter you generate. Glaiviers will have a meter that will both passively and actively generate. This meter has 3 levels. Filling each level, then swapping stances will provide you with the following buffs. Swapping to blue, the first bar will give you 5% movement speed, the second bar will give you 10% movement speed and 10% damage to enemies, and the third bar will give you 10% attack speed, 10% damage to enemies, and a 15% crit rate buff. Swapping to the red stance, the first bar will provide you a 5% movement speed, second bar will give you a 10% movement speed with 10% damage to enemies, and the third bar will give you a 15% movement speed, 10% damage to enemies, and a 25% crit damage buff. A quality of life feature here, but below the meter you'll also notice a small little grid that represents the skills of both your stances. This is showing your opposite stance's skill cooldown so you can track when your skills from the opposite stance become available without having to swap. Overall, the kit will provide you with a very wide range of skills, which is what makes this class so fun to play. In the blue stance, you'll have some nice short to mid-range mobility while having large hitboxes with a few 360-degree skills. You'll even have a large tornado skill that you can summon. The red stance, being your poking stance, provides additional mobility with a nice leap with some solid ranged burst. As you can see, this kit style is much more longer but thinner when it comes to those hitboxes as mentioned before. And if this wasn't enough, Glaiviers also have a fantastic block that's very similar to Gunlancer's counter spear. This is your oh shit button that will give you a massive temporary shield to block and counter incoming attacks. Looking at the engravings now, you'll have the option to choose between Climax and Temperance. These names are of course subject to change when the class releases. Both specs are seen at end gameplay, so definitely choose which playstyle you prefer most. With that said, of the two, Climax is definitely the more popular one in Korea. Climax is very straightforward considering it actually doesn't do anything the Glaivier doesn't do already. The buffs you receive when swapping stances are pretty much just enhanced. Temperance is for those who don't like the idea of stance swapping and tracking buffs accordingly. This spec removes the red stance but giving your blue stance an extra 36% damage at level 3. Generally speaking, Climax users will build main stat specialty with the secondary stat being swiftness. I will say that this spec could feel a bit slow and clunky depending on what class you're coming from. For example, as an esoteric striker who's used to playing with high swiftness, the longer animations, especially in the blue stance with Climax, can feel a little bit slow and clunky. But I will say when you connect, it feels very nice. I do, however, love the fact that I always have something to press as there's really no downtime due to the amount of raw skills available. One last note here, the specialty stat for Glaivier is just so good and impossible to give up, so don't even think about playing anything non-specialty with this spec. If you have to play Glaivier and you don't like the idea of stance swapping, then you should be happy to know that the speed of your blue stance will be a lot faster as your main stat priority is swiftness with Temperance. This will give you a much more straightforward gameplay style that feels less locked in when it comes to the speed and animation.